And we're back. My Argentinian friend, you are back home.
Back to
How is
normal.
it? How does it feel being back home?
I love it. I love it, man. It's just beautiful weather. It's great to be home. What can I say? We were just discussing, having to stream from random hotels and Airbnbs and whatever. It's fun, but very unreliable.
We got to get you one of these international Wi-Fi cards so that you can travel around with it. That
Ah,
would be ideal.
that would be
Um,
smart.
yeah, a little a little holiday gift come early for you, my friend. How about that? Well, dude,
I mean,
what are you
look,
seeing
I
out
think
there?
it'd be a good way to celebrate Benzinga's massive milestone. I mean, it's not cannabis, but it is cannabis related. Benzinga got, we have this massive fund called Beringer or Beringer. I don't know how you want to
Behringer.
pronounce it. I've heard it both ways. I was going with Beringer, but whatever. They invested and acquired a majority stake in Benzinga, valuing the company at $300 million. So, I mean, this is a startup, the company that started 11 years ago in Jason Rasnick's garage with $3,000. And now we're a $300 million company, and continue to grow. And I don't know, I'm just very proud. How do you feel?
Proud, and also tired. No, so you guys, this has been a really cool thing that we've obviously been working on for a while, and we've kept it under wraps. It's been really hard not to talk about it, but it's been really cool to see already many of you coming out of the woodwork to say hey and congrats, and even the warm wishes we get from all sectors, but especially our friends in cannabis who are excited for us. I mean, a lot of people, I guess, look at us as another way to look at this industry in a legitimate light, right? And we were one of the first financial platforms that were seriously covering the cannabis space. So it's exciting, I think,
Indeed.
to see it all come full circle.
Indeed, and as you say, we less than 10 days ago we hosted our famous Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference, and it was back in person in New York City. And people were asking, "Hey, what's going on with Benzinga? What's up with Benzinga?" We'd be, "Well, like nothing, the usual, just working and growing."
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough not to be able to talk about it, but now we can. We're excited. If you guys have questions, let us know. But if you have comments, if you've got ideas, let us know. Like, we are full throttle moving forward here. We're so excited
Mhm.
for what this means for us.
So another, piece of news related somehow to the trip that we did together with Patrick and our co-host Elliot and our producer Aaron. We were also in Las Vegas for MJ BizCon. We did two days of streaming from the floor. You can go check it out on our YouTube channel. One thing I learned is that Aaron likes Pitbull. Pitbull, the rapper or musician or whatever you want to call him. And guess what? He just got into the cannabis industry. He announced a partnership with Columbia Care that is CCHWF. Once again, CCHWF on the OTCQX. They are teaming up to launch a new CBD product line. It's called N2P. If you can guess what it means, you get a gold star. No cheating. Don't
Now you
look
have
me.
to tell us. Anybody in
Can
the
you
chat?
guess?
Anybody in the chat?
N2P.
N2P. All
So
right,
it's,
give us a
I'm
hint.
going to say it.
All right, just say it.
I'm going to say it. Negative to positive. That is the name of Pitbull's new CBD brand with Columbia Care, one of the largest US MSOs or multi-state operators out there.
I would have gone with PAT, producer Aaron Thomas, as my brand. Just want to throw that out there.
Love it. Shout out to Aaron, man. Great
Yep.
job.
So
Negative to
I
positive.
mean, there's so
Always
much.
Zach.
Yeah,
There you go.
Zach's always there for us. Zach,
That's
what's up, dude?
Zach.
What's up, man? One of the things that, I mean, I want you to go through some more news because I know you've got some more to talk about. But at the very end, I want to talk about some stocks for a second because I think it'll lead us into our guest today. What else are you
Okay.
seeing, man?
Yeah, some other news. MedMen has a new COO. She is called Roz Lipsy, and I am happy to see another woman in the C-suite. Again, MedMen is MMNFF on the OTC, MMNFF, or
So many.
MMEN on the Canadian exchanges. She was she's replacing Tim Bossity, who served as interim COO since 2020. And you know, Lipsy has also been in the company since 2020. Prior to that, she served as senior vice president of business operations at MedMen, and you know, she also worked in cannabis before MedMen in a vertically integrated cannabis company out of Arizona.
Very cool. What about Tilray? Tilray came out with some news in Canada, or yeah, both Canada and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Canada, they just announced a new president to lead the Canadian market, right? And then what's going on in Luxembourg?
And yeah, I mean, Luxembourg is you know, steps away from becoming the first European country to legalize cannabis, by the way. But in the meantime, Tilray, TLRY, confirmed that it has been chosen by the Luxembourg Ministry of Health as a supplier for the country's medical cannabis program, which was announced very recently. So the company will provide with, you know, Luxembourg with several pharma grade and GMP certificated medical cannabis products, extracts, right, flour, et cetera, et cetera. Very, very interesting, prescription based. Shouldn't be a massive market, of course, for Tilray. Luxembourg is about this big. But again, it's always good to have a strong foothold in Europe. And it's been part of CEO Erwin Simon's express mission since day one. Since he took over, he's been on Benzinga Cannabis Hour, Benzinga Cannabis Insider, Power Hour, etc. many times, and he's always manifested this, you know, interest in the European market. So, you know, cheers to seeing promises materialize.
Right. Okay, cool. So I have just one more thing that I think could be cool to chat about, Javi, and I'd love your opinion on some of this. And if possible, I'm going to try and share my screen. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to pull this up. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever look at New Cannabis Ventures. I'm sharing this for a second.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
Normally I would show Benzinga Pro, so maybe we'll get that version up, and Aaron Thomas can show us here in a second, or next time we do this. But if you look at the indices that Alan Brockstein has on New Cannabis Ventures, one that sticks out to me is this American Cannabis Operator Index. I also look at the ancillary index a lot. It's performing a lot better than the American Operator Index these days, right? But here's the thing: if you look at this industry, and I heard this from a lot of folks at our New York conference and in Vegas, right? It's been a tough year, right? We've seen some of the stocks, a lot of stocks have taken a hit. We know that, right? And if you're looking at a chart like this, it's fairly indicative of where we are, right? And I think many people, including maybe our next guest who has some input on this, right, would say it's probably akin to there being some trouble in the administration and getting any sort of regulation passed, the Safe Banking Act being stalled. Maybe a lot of people thinking that with the new incoming administration, there would have been a heavy uplift like we saw here, right? And then not much happening after that, right? So I'd love to get our next guest's take on that, and we'll bring him over in a second. But things that I want to say, and generally speaking, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think it's hurting me now in terms of my signal. But it represents opportunity to me, right? I know we talk about this a lot, but you guys, there are
I agree.
already right, there are already market caps that you're looking at for some of these fairly well-performing stocks over the years that are trading at a discount to peers, right? So we already have that going for some of these folks. And then you look at some of these people who are still right there, neck and neck with their 52-week highs, even after a pretty tremendously bad year for cannabis stocks. So we'll go over some of those in a second, mainly on the ancillary side, folks like IIPR, not New Lake Power REIT,
Mm-hmm.
Scott's Miracle Grow. Many of those companies are still Urban Grow, doing incredibly well in that space. But look for the opportunity, because I've been talking to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people about it, but it's clear to me now that this is the time, right? Especially if you're looking in the bargain bin, if you're looking for value, and especially if you're a long-term investor moving forward, now's the opportunity where you're going to see a lot of real positions that you could take, right? Just a
Indeed.
heads up.
If you're looking for another stock that has been outperforming Microsoft, Netflix, Apple, and Facebook, go to benzinga.com/cannabis and check out an article by Nina Stinchak posted today, where
It's a great
she
article.
highlights a specific Canadian cannabis stock. For those Canada bears, I'm not gonna throw shade on you, but just go check it out. And with that,
I
let's
love it.
transition into our interview today. Today we have Justin Fisher. He's the CEO and co-founder of RiskScout. Justin, welcome to Benzinga Cannabis Insider.
Thanks,
How you
guys.
doing?
Good. How are y'all?
We're
Doing
great,
good.
man. We're glad to have you with us.
It's good to be here.
So why don't we start out? I mean, yes. Why don't we do this? Why don't we have you introduce yourself and the company, Justin? But after that, I mean, let's have your take on where we are, and then we'll jump into some questions here. But the cannabis market is what it is. Anybody can see where a lot of these stocks are right now and how they've performed this year. Give us your take on sort of where we are. But first, a little bit on you and Risk Scout. I'll get it eventually.
Sure. So CEO, co-founder of RiskScout. Got about a 20-year background in fintech, building applications for banks and credit unions across the country. And I'll just say a little further back, my family are actually fourth-generation farmers. Interesting side story is we used to do produce, not profitable, under 100 acres. My dad's actually talking about going into hemp in the state of Texas. So we're in Texas, so it's mostly hemp that we're growing there. But yeah, I'll add my take on this. I don't follow a lot of the Canadian markets, but from a banking and regulation perspective, the lack of regulations and lack of clarity is stifling across the industry, especially in the financial sector. I was just talking to a couple of bankers recently, and I was looking at these alternative finance vendors on the THC side. Hey, more power to them that they've created programs where they can lend to the space, right? Because the banks are not doing it. However, I'm not quite sure I'd recommend that to my father, right? I don't know that I want to see him get an 18 to 22% loan, out there. And, hey, they're making their spread, they're doing their thing. But, and some of these companies are killing it. So that working capital is going to be great. But I think in general, not having good access to capital, not being able to be financially secure with your bank account, it has a huge impact. There's just tons, and it's THC. It's also hemp and CBD, which has been legal for several years now, rolled out federally legal, growing in all 50 states. Yet, there's still access problems to banking. So I definitely think it's taking its toll. You mentioned the Safe Banking Act. We're kind of in a new breath of life. Hopefully, getting attached to the NDAA, but then of course the NDA's in the news quite a bit, going back and forth around how that's going to shape out. But there's hope in the industry right now that we'll get some form of the Safe Banking Act in the next 8 to 12 months. I've actually had probably about 15 times more banks in the last 6 months reaching out saying, hey, we think something's going to happen. In cannabis and the THC side, we want to be prepared. So it's a good sign.
I have a question for you, right? A few days ago at the Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference, one of the speakers who runs a REIT was, broke the news that they had secured a debt facility at 4.75%, right? FDIC insured and everything. It seems like a step forward. Are you seeing this across the industry? Is this very specific to a very specific REIT? Is it are rates coming down? Because, what I knew so far was like exactly what you said, rates are 17, 18, 20%, right? Are they coming down? And if so, for whom? Because it doesn't seem like this is reaching anyone, like a bunch of people, right? And everyone, right. This was like a very specific $20 million facility. Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bespoke deals going on, right? So those things are really the majority of the case. The traditional financial institutions is who I mostly work with. So banks and credit unions across the country. I see both hemp loans and I see the THC loans. So on the THC loans, very limited in the traditional financial space, right? So traditional bank, brick and mortar type of bank, it's not going to be doing it. I have seen a few. And they are real estate based. They're collateral based on real estate. They're essentially real estate deals, right? And that's how they work the thing. On the hemp side now, the positive on that side is there's quite a bit of growth. Government backed loans are okay. SBA loans. We also PPP loans on the hemp side were good, even though there was confusion about that. Those loans are fine, and we see banks making those loans. But But again, I don't know how much you guys know about the traditional space, but there's over 8,000 banks and credit unions in this country. It's crazy,
Yep.
right? Especially if you've been international. And you know, we used to quote 12,000 when I was doing this, 10 years ago. So there's been a lot of consolidation. But really, there's only about 200 that are actually doing full-fledged compliance programs for THC, right? So credit unions and banks. And out of that, probably only 10 who are really public about it in the US, because the more public you are, the more regulator scrutiny and examiner scrutiny you get. Yeah. So, they're doing it. Now, you might have heard numbers like 600, 700. There's a number thrown out around there. Usually that's in reference to filing SARs, or suspicious activity reports. They're required for essentially every transaction. The problem is that every bank across the country thinks they might have a marijuana company, and maybe they do, or a THC, hemp business, whatever, CBD, and they file a SAR. And so that's just counting the unique number of reports, right? It doesn't necessarily count someone who's actually gone through the trouble of setting up department, creating the BSA, the Bank Secrecy Act compliance requirements, and then actually banking it. And
that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's where we lead in. That's what RiskScout does.
Are you sure about this? Because I mean, this kind of changes my entire paradigm. I've been repeating that number again and again. Like, okay, so there's somewhere between 600 and 800, credit unions and small banks servicing the cannabis and the hemp industries. Is it wrong? I mean, it seems to be kind of wrong, because honestly, if you tell me I have one cannabis customer, you're not really servicing the industry, right? It's like those companies that have 5% of their revenue derived from something cannabis related, and they go like, we're a cannabis company now. No, you're not.
No.
Yeah. On the hemp side, just as a side note, and a lot of people get this confused, right? They say hemp is cannabis, and obviously it's the same plant, different requirements, but there's probably 2,500 to 3,000 institutions banking some form. And now that's different, because like I was telling you about my father's farm, he's banked with a bank for 30 years in a small town. They're going to start banking it now, right? Now that's not the same requirements as THC, and the federal restrictions. But let's just roll back for a second. In order to be an institution that's essentially safely banking this space, you've got to be ultra specific. You've got to be in a legal state, number one. So that's a big
I was
limiter,
just going to say, right? Justin, it matters if you're federally or state chartered, right?
Correct. Now you can get FDIC insurance, even if the state banks have FDIC, and FDIC is okay with THC as long as you're running all the programs and following fencing guidance. But yeah, you really can't be a nationally operated institution who's regulated by national entities, who's going across multiple states, which makes it obviously really hard for MSOs, multi-state operators, right? Because they're done having, but they're kind of structured that way anyways. I'm not sure if you've seen their business structures, but they usually are structured in separate businesses in those states, and then they'll get bank accounts in those states. But yeah, that's first a big limiter, right? And then, that number is not official, the 200. We in the industry who work with these institutions, we sell software to those banks. We try to help those banks cover the compliance and the regulatory requirements. And that's where we come into play. So we kind of see and talk to them all the time. The 600, 700 was just a number inflated by the SARS filing. So that's the biggest issue. But if you roll back one more time and go, okay, so what's the big problem? Like, why aren't they doing it? All these people are interested. All these banks are interested, but why aren't they doing it? Well, that's where it rolls the Safe Banking Act, right? Banks operate off of regulation, right? They want to see clear regulation before they go into what would they consider a risky market, even adjacent, right? And that's a big problem. You could be a dude, creating Ziploc bags, sealed bags for the industry, but because all of your revenue comes from, THC, you're considered at least a type 3 in a bank's perspective.
We've received like certain levels of scrutiny, for covering cannabis so prominently, for featuring it on the front page. We received some questions like, hey, okay, so what's up with this, right? So even like, not even touching the plant in any of its stages.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah. So get this, we're working with a $100 billion bank, and we use I won't name any of the names here just in case, but working with a $100 billion bank, and they don't bank direct hemp or cannabis, but they bank payroll companies, and they bank technology firms, right? And so we actually happen to be using one of these payroll companies, and they saw us advertising cannabis compliance software to banks, and they reach out and they say, hey, we're going to have to kick you out. I mean, literally no other questions. Like, you're out, you're a cannabis company. And we said, why? And they said, because our bank requires us to ask and to get these guys out so that no funds are transiting the account. And it turned out we actually have a direct bank relationship with that same bank. So it was like, hey, it's not an issue, and we're not a cannabis business. But there's a lot of like baby out with the bathwater, right? It's like, you know, I don't know, CBD, Delta 8, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like bad stuff. I'm going to touch it, and they throw it out, right? And so that's the challenge with this space. And so we come in first, not saying bankers, you need to bank it, but we come in and we actually have bank examiners on our team. We have compliance officers, and we say, look, this is what the examiners are looking for. This is a massive market. There's at least one institution out there, guys, that was, let's see, 4 years ago, they were 500 million in assets. Now they're doing well over $1 billion every year in new deposits. I mean, that's unheard of for that kind. I mean, it's unheard of for any institution, much less an institution, you know, that starts at that has built a bank over 50 years with 500 million in assets, right? And then all of a sudden is bringing in $1 billion each year. It's a massive market, right? But, you know, herein lies this challenge where you've got to make sure that you've got a reasonable compliance program, you've got enough people on a keyboard, and you use some technology to try to make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, right?
Yeah, geez, it sounds like a hell of a place to be for you,
Mhm.
Justin. I mean, just because I see it on your site, let's jump to this for a second. I mean, a lot of these banks are dealing with with getting over the hump in terms of accepting cannabis businesses and however they're choosing to do business with them. What about now the addition of cryptocurrency into the mix? And
Yeah.
how the hell that works with a lot of these cannabis businesses and how they accept payment and digital payments in general and what a minefield that is. Can you tell us a little bit how you're navigating all of that?
Yeah. There's actually this kind of magic pyramid. It kind of reminds me if you ever watched the movie Pinocchio, right? You go to the island and it's all the bad stuff, smoking and drinking and gambling and, you know, hey, okay, you know, vices. But there's kind of a magic pyramid of 3 businesses that all touch each other here that the banks absolutely provide claim as high risk, and that is cannabis, right? So THC, and then, you know, hemp in some extent, cryptocurrency, and that's mostly because it's a misunderstanding. They see cryptocurrency in ransomware, they see cryptocurrency in sort of dark web transactions, and again, it's like, I don't know anything about it, I can't track it like I can my regular financial, you know, money laundering. You guys are a fan of Ozarks? I don't know. Got
Yeah, of
Ozarks
course.
here. Yeah, so
Okay.
really actually accurate money laundering perspective.
Oh yeah,
Ever watched the movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck?
Yeah,
So
that's
I watched it.
anything that's
despite Ben
finance
Affleck.
related
Yeah.
and popular enough, we've seen it.
yeah, Breaking Bad. I mean, you can go on and on, right? Stacking up the cash, you know, laundering the cash. Well, the biggest challenge is when that cash moves through intermediaries like cryptocurrency where you can't see it, right? And so that's what freaks out the banks. And so they're still working. And, you know, then they look to the regulators and say, hey, I don't want to be caught, you know, even unintentionally not finding, you know, criminal elements in my bank. So because they can, you know, if you're a C-level title, especially the compliance officer, you could actually end up in prison over this, right? So they said, rather not touch it, push it away until the regulators actually come out and tell me what to do. When they tell me what to do, I'll follow the letter of the law, you know. And then I think with cannabis, there's still some morality issue out there, you know, that, you know, can't quite put your finger on with some of these institutions. But in general, now the third one is ATMs. So 60% of the ATMs in this country are actually called private ATMs. They're owned by private entities. You might see them, you know, at a bar or a nightclub or wherever. Well, really bad money laundering can happen in those situations too, where you take the cash out of the bar, you know, out of the register, and you literally put it into the ATM. Well, that like conceals the source of the money movement, right? And so now the big thing is a cryptocurrency ATM in a dispensary. And, you know, everyone, like all of us on this side, is like, yeah, awesome, man, I can buy with my Bitcoin, I can get cash out, and I can buy my pot whenever I want. Yeah, that's not what the bank sees, right? They see, you know, adjacent potential criminal industries, you know, and it's a little bit of guilty until proven innocent, and then, you know, potentially concealment of money movement. And that's the big problem. And I don't remember the interview I saw the other day, but the gentleman, they asked, well, doesn't cryptocurrency create more possibility for this problem? Yes and no, but, you know, he held up a briefcase and says, imagine this is full of cash. I wish we all had one right here full of cash, right? But imagine it's full of cash. That's the easiest way to conceal the source of money, is to use cash, right? But when we talk about cannabis businesses, hemp businesses, you know, dispensaries, farmers, whatever, you can't make payroll when, you know, your cash is sitting in a safe, right? You're going to have to do the envelopes and the, you know, the manual parts. You need an institution. You need modern financial tools, right? And that's the problem we're sitting at in our space.
It's crazy. We visited a massive dispensary recently, and of course, like everyone, you know, deals in cash. And we're seeing like, the employees just putting the money into machines that save the money and categorize it. And then they have to put it in one vault and then in another vault, and then a third vault, and then have like
the secure transport, come get it and all that,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Smart safes. That's actually probably what you're seeing. Now, a lot of the banks will insist on smart safes. So it's kind of like when you see a big $100 bill and they put it in a special spot. Well, now they feed all the cash into the smart safe and it actually gets counted and the bank will register the deposit early. And one of the reasons, this is a crazy reason, one of the reasons that happens is because the regulators want to see the banks check the money before it gets deposited. Seems like it's a simple thing. They could just give the money back if they feel like it came from illicit funds, but they're so literal about the term not having illegal or illicit funds in the bank that they want it checked before it actually comes over. So those are the kind of things that, then you go, well, is that practical? No, it's really not. It's like, is a bank who's, got some technology, but not a ton of technology solutions going to be able to mandate, different or actually support all the different smart safes out there? Are they going to be able to mandate one specific software? So we see this kind of all across the country as, a dispensary will go in and go open a bank account and they're finally happy. And then the bank's like, oh yeah, but you've got to use this software, and this hardware vendor before we're going to make sure, before we're going to continue to bank you.
Indeed. And,
wow.
Yeah, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the problem that you're solving here is an interesting one, right? And it's one that we're still developing the answer to, right? It's a bit of a moving target until more regulation happens. But I would imagine where you sit, Justin, is, hey, this is where we are now. This is what we can assist you with in terms of building out a compliance program to service these people. And as it changes, we'll have more, right? Is that basically the conversation you're having with these guys?
Yeah. So we are a partner in this because there is no just software you can deploy and get out. And so we stay up with the laws. I'm sure you guys seen on the hemp side, Delta 8 kind of changing across the country. It just changed pretty radically here in Texas, where it just literally showed up on a website for the Department of Health, and now it's become a rule, and there's lawsuits all popping up. And so, the banks are watching this and they're saying, hey, what do we do? And obviously we're watching it and we give them bulletins, but the key to our software is it's actually our IP. It's actually configurable. So any institution anywhere can change their policy, can change what's required. So for example, let's say, Patrick, you're a dispensary and you're in THC, right? And Javier is a CBD, CBD store, CBD dispensary, or just a farmer. So we can actually deploy a different compliance workflow for California and a different one for Javier's business in Texas, right? And so as those things change, we adjust those compliance workflows and then snap them in, all from the feedback from what's happening in regulation. But also, you know what the big thing is? The rubber meets the road when the examiner comes into the bank and says, all right, Patrick, or Justin, why did you allow Patrick's business to come in? And show me where you talk to him once a month. Show me where you look at his COA, testing report. Show me. And there's all these things that the bank, is expected to do. And if they're doing that manually and hands on a keyboard, it's going to be horrible when the examiner comes in. Because if you can't
we
prove
all
it,
know. Yeah. So I was sorry. I used to work in banks too before I came to Benzinga, and it was small regional banks, right? But even so, when those examiners come through, it is hell on earth for those bankers, right? Imagine getting audited by the IRS, but at a much deeper level, right?
Yeah, I explained it like, imagine having your mortgage. Like all of us can like represent a personal mortgage. Imagine every month they come in and say, give me your pay stubs, your 2 pay stubs, and I want to see where you haven't spent a lot of money on your credit card. Because if you have, I'm taking your mortgage back. Like that's the equivalent of what they go through, right?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
No, it's not fun at all. So I can imagine the hesitation, let's say, in terms of their willingness to really jump out there. And at the same time, this is a burgeoning industry and one that a lot of these guys want to play in. They're just not quite sure how yet, right?
Exactly.
So they need people like you, Justin.
Yeah, I'll tell you one last thing on this is that I just recently spoke to a bank, not doing THC. They're interested in hemp policy, but their BSA officer, the compliance officer, said absolutely not. It's all the same. We're not doing it. And you know what actually happened to them is they had a customer who had an $8 million loan, high net customer, right? He has multiple businesses, but he builds strip centers. And then he has a minority interest in a CBD store, so he put them in a strip center. That was grounds for the compliance officer to kick that customer or want to kick that customer out. So we're in the middle of the throes of trying to help the bank's sort of opportunity biz dev side work with their compliance side to say, look, I don't know where you're getting your information, but you can manage this. You do not have to have an army of people. You're not going to get in trouble if you do it the right way, and we can help you do it. And that's the thing I think sometimes people see what we do and they go, oh, well, we're not in cannabis, or we're not going to do hemp, or we're not. Actually, you're doing it today in many different fashions. The key for us is to be consistent, because I don't want to see you banking businesses and then 90 to 180 days, 12 months later, kicking them out randomly. They don't want that, right? You don't want that. It's a bad situation. So either be upfront, but also, use technology to actually filter and manage these businesses, and you're fine, But again, if I could say one thing, is baby out the bathwater. Like, look at every deal differently. I have a small bank who says no THC, but they bank a business that does $15 million in revenue, growing 30% year over year, who only sells greenhouse lights. But guess what? Probably 100% of their business, their cash, comes from, the THC industry, right? Yeah. And, 3 or 4 years ago, that was considered just as bad as someone who was growing it. So we're starting to change, but it's really about understanding these different business markets, the different liability and risk types, and then, the opportunity, and then going after it.
Well, maybe just one more question here, Justin, and then I think we'll have to close it up. But what happens to your business when federal legalization, Safe Banking Act, all these things happen, right, and actually come to fruition? What happens to RiskScout then?
I love this question. This is probably the number one investor question that I get.
I'm here. And
there you go. It's a softball. So here's the deal. ATMs and MSBs have been around for 2 or 3 decades. They're still really difficult to bank from a regulatory perspective. Just because something gets legalized doesn't mean it gets better. It can get a lot worse. In fact, hemp, you can look at the number of illegal grows, and most of the THC states have increased, right? Regulation can create challenges. I think the near term for us in the next 3 years is that we'll just call it Safe Banking Act covering the next 3 years. I think legalization personally is sometime a little bit around that spot and maybe beyond, at least from a practical implementation across the country. But here's what happens to us. We actually get more institutions because they get off the sidelines and they say, hey, these are regs that we can actually work off of. We're going to go bank this and we're going to go do it. But the list of things they have to do is growing, right? Will grow tremendously because the regs will start coming out and it'll say, you need to do all these things to check the money, right? And so we'll have to be there as a technology provider to do that. Now, when we can all walk in the gas station or the grocery store or the place right on the corner and buy our pot really easily and walk out, similar to alcohol, then I think it commoditizes. And I think a lot of people have this mixed perspective that when marijuana, THC legalizes, that it'll literally be commoditized. And I don't think that's the case. In fact, we may see some type of pharma type of legalization first. I don't know. Right. But, some type of, real, diluted versus sort of pharmaceutical grade kind of thing happen. But nevertheless, we're ways out from alcohol parallels, right? In my mind, the industry will grow to alcohol parallels, in my opinion. But I think the commoditization of the risk and the normalcy of this, I think is probably, a number of years farther out. And that's when no one will care on the sort of bank side, RiskScout side.
Indeed. Well, go check out RiskScout.com. That is pretty easy, RiskScout.com. Justin Fisher is their CEO and co-founder. Justin, thank you so much for joining us at Benzinga Cannabis Insider, and we look forward to having you again sometime soon.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. What a cool discussion, man.
Nerding out.
Yes.
It's good to be back home. I like this, man. I really enjoy this.
Yeah, no, me too, man. And I think that what a pertinent issue for us to be discussing right now, right?
Indeed.
AT's right. Smash the like, you guys. Subscribe. Let us know what and who you want to hear from next, right? We are burning and turning after this transaction, after our events are over. We're not slowing down. Some of you are getting ready for Thanksgiving and the holidays. We're not there yet. Take a chill pill. Let's keep this rolling. Javi, what? You look like you're going to say something.
Benzinga Small Cap Conference tomorrow and Thursday. We'll also be talking cannabis because, cannabis is everywhere. It's no longer a low niche industry. It's no longer a cottage industry. It fits into the larger scheme of things, into the larger markets, into the capital markets, into banking. And we'll be discussing all of it tomorrow and Thursday. Benzinga Small Cap Conference. Check it out.
That's it, you guys.
Check it.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you, Javi, for the plug. That's great, man. And I think you guys too, as we move forward with these conferences, let us know who you want to hear from. we want to get the tickers up there that you guys want to hear from, and we'll get them, cannabis or otherwise. We will make sure that we have them come and speak to you. So Zach, thanks, man. Thanks for always being here. We appreciate it. Javi, anything else for our folks?
Big shout out to Zach. Big shout out to our producer, Aaron Thomas. Check out benzinga.com/cannabis. Do not forget to bookmark it. Smash a like, follow us on social, do whatever you like, but continue to support this and be a part of our ecosystem. We love you all, and we're here for you.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.